I've always been told I look like winter personified, pale skin that rivals fresh snow, delicate features that belong more to porcelain dolls than to men. My name is Christopher, and at 25 I should have been living my best years. Instead, I found myself trapped in a marriage that felt more like a beautifully decorated prison. The arrangement had been made when I was 22. My parents, desperate to secure business connections with the influential Wilson family, offered me up like a bargaining chip. Wilson was everything society deemed perfect: successful, handsome, charismatic. What they didn't know, what I didn't know until it was too late, was that his heart had never been mine to claim. I remember our wedding day vividly. The cathedral was filled with white lilies, their scent almost suffocating. Wilson stood at the altar in his impeccable suit, but his eyes weren't on me as I walked down the aisle. They were fixed on my older brother Alex, standing among the groomsmen, wearing an expression I couldn't quite read at the time. Those first years of marriage were a study in loneliness. Wilson was never cruel then, just absent. Emotionally, physically, in every way that mattered. I threw myself into supporting his career, managing our household, attending endless social functions with a smile plastered on my face. When his business ventures failed, I was there. When he faced bankruptcy, I used my own inheritance to keep him afloat. When the world turned its back on him, I remained steadfast. "Christopher, I need another loan," Wilson would say, barely looking up from his papers. "Of course," I'd reply, signing away another piece of my family's legacy without hesitation. "You're so understanding," he'd mutter, but there was never warmth in those words. Just acknowledgement of a useful tool. I told myself that love would grow. That dedication and sacrifice would eventually be rewarded. I was such a fool. Everything changed when Wilson's company finally took off. The risky venture I'd funded with the last of my inheritance became a massive success. Suddenly, Wilson was everywhere: magazine covers, business conferences, charity galas. The man who had once needed me was now the man everyone wanted. And with success came his true colors. "You're an embarrassment," Wilson told me one evening after a gala. We were alone in our bedroom, and he didn't even bother to lower his voice. "Standing there with your pale, sickly look. People were asking if you were ill. Do you know how that reflects on me?" I stood frozen, still wearing the expensive suit I'd carefully selected. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "You never mean to do anything," he cut me off sharply. "You just exist, draining the life from every room you enter." These verbal assaults became routine. Each day brought new criticisms, new ways he found me lacking. But the worst was yet to come. I'll never forget the day I discovered the affair. I'd come home early from a charity meeting, eager to surprise Wilson with his favorite dinner. The sounds coming from our bedroom told a story I'd been blind to for years. When I pushed open the door, I found Wilson entangled with my brother Alex. They didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "Christopher," Alex said, actually smiling as he adjusted his clothes. "Finally figured it out, have you?" Wilson laughed, actually laughed. "Don't look so shocked. Did you really think I married you for love? It was always about Alex. You were just convenient." The room spun. "But everything I did for you was expected," Wilson interrupted coldly. "You played your part perfectly. The devoted spouse, the endless well of resources. But now that I don't need your money anymore, what exactly is your purpose?" From that day forward, my life became a waking nightmare. Wilson and Alex didn't hide their relationship. They flaunted it. They'd mock me at dinner parties, make cruel jokes about my appearance, whisper loud enough for me to hear about how pathetic I was. "Poor Christopher," Alex would say, dripping with false sympathy. "Still clinging to a marriage that was dead before it began." "He's like a ghost," Wilson would add, "haunting our lives with his pale, pitiful presence." I endured because I had nowhere else to go. My parents had passed away years ago. My inheritance was gone, invested in Wilson's success. My friends had slowly disappeared, alienated by Wilson's subtle manipulations. I was truly alone. 6 months after discovering their affair, my health began to deteriorate rapidly. At first, I thought it was stress, the constant anxiety, the verbal abuse, the humiliation. But as weeks passed, I grew weaker. Food tasted strange. I developed severe stomach pains. I could barely get out of bed some mornings. "You're being dramatic," Wilson said when I mentioned seeing a doctor. Always seeking attention. But I knew something was deeply wrong. My pale skin became translucent, my delicate features gaunt. I looked like death itself. One evening, as I lay in bed too weak to move, Wilson and Alex entered my room together. There was something in their expressions, a mixture of anticipation and cold satisfaction. that made my blood run cold. "Christopher," Wilson began, sitting on the edge of the bed. "We need to talk." Alex stood behind him, arms crossed, wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We've been poisoning you," Wilson continued casually, as if discussing the weather. "Small doses in your food, your drinks. Nothing too obvious, nothing that would raise suspicions. Just enough to slowly shut down your organs." The words didn't register at first. My brain couldn't process such calculated cruelty. "Why?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Because you're in the way," Alex answered, leaning forward. "Wilson and I want to be together openly. But a divorce would be messy, bad for Wilson's image, might affect the company's stock. Your death, however tragic and unfortunate, would make Wilson a sympathetic widower." Wilson nodded, actually looking pleased with himself. "Plus, there's the matter of your trust fund. The one that reverts to your spouse upon your death. That'll be quite useful." I wanted to scream, to fight, to do something. But my body was failing. Each breath was agony. "Did you ever love me?" I asked Wilson, knowing the answer but needing to hear it. "Love you?" Wilson laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Christopher, I've never even liked you. You were a means to an end. Your family's money, your connections, your pathetic devotion, all tools I used to build my empire. But you? You were always just a pale shadow I had to tolerate." "We actually started planning this years ago," Alex added, his voice filled with pride. "Even before the wedding. Wilson and I fell in love in college, but your family had more money, better connections. So we devised a plan. He'd marry you, use your resources, and once he was successful enough, we'd eliminate you and be together. You were surprisingly easy to manipulate," Wilson continued. "So desperate for approval, for love. You gave me everything I asked for without question. It would be admirable if it wasn't so pathetic." As they spoke, I felt my consciousness slipping. This was it. The end. Years of dedication, sacrifice, and love, all for nothing. I was going to die at the hands of the two people I should have been able to trust most. "Any last words?" Alex asked mockingly. With my final breaths, I managed to speak, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "If I get another chance, if fate gives me one more opportunity, I will make you both pay. You'll experience every pain you've inflicted on me, every humiliation, every betrayal. This I swear." They laughed as darkness claimed me. The last thing I heard was Wilson saying, "Empty threats from a dead man. How typical." I opened my eyes to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment I thought I was dreaming, or that this was some strange afterlife. But the sensations were too real. The soft sheets beneath me, the sound of birds chirping outside, the faint scent of coffee. I sat up quickly, gasping, my hands flying to my stomach where the pain had been unbearable just moments, or was it years ago? Nothing. No pain, no nausea. I looked at my hands, turning them over. They were smooth, healthy, unmistakably mine, but somehow different. Racing to the mirror, I stared at my reflection. It was me, the pale skin, the delicate features, but younger, healthier. I looked exactly as I had on my 22nd birthday, before the wedding, before everything went wrong. "This can't be real," I whispered to my reflection. But it was. Somehow, impossibly, I'd been given a second chance. I'd been reborn, sent back to the moment before my life became a nightmare. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Checking the date confirmed my suspicions. I was exactly 1 week before my wedding to Wilson. 7 days to change everything. The euphoria was overwhelming. I could fix this. I could avoid the marriage, expose Wilson and Alex, protect myself. But as I sat on the edge of the bed, a darker thought crept in. Why should I simply avoid them? They had planned my murder for years, used me, destroyed me. They deserved more than just losing their scheme. They deserved to suffer. A knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. "Christopher? Are you awake? We need to discuss the final wedding arrangements." My mother's voice. My mother, who I'd lost years ago to illness. Hearing her again brought tears to my eyes. "I'll be right there, Mom," I called back, my voice steady despite my emotions. As I dressed, a plan began forming in my mind. But I would need help. Resources. Information. I couldn't do this alone. That's when I remembered Lucas. Lucas Hartwell had always existed on the periphery of my previous life. A wealthy businessman, a few years older than me, he attended the same social functions I did. We'd exchange pleasantries, nothing more. I'd been so focused on Wilson that I'd never really noticed him. But in my previous timeline, after my death, I'd heard rumors, whispered conversations at my own funeral that I'd somehow been aware of in my dying moments. Lucas had been there, standing apart from the others, and I'd heard someone mention that he'd had feelings for me. That he'd watched from afar but never approached because I was engaged to Wilson. Now, with this knowledge and a second chance, I saw Lucas differently. If he'd cared for me once, perhaps he could be persuaded to help me now. And from what I remembered, his resources were vast, possibly even greater than Wilson's current success. I found him 3 days later at a charity art auction. He stood alone, examining a painting with genuine interest rather than the affected appreciation most attendees displayed. Even from across the room, I could see why I'd overlooked him before. He didn't demand attention like Wilson did. His power was quieter, more refined. "That's a Rothko," I said, approaching him. Color field movement. Bold but contemplative. Lucas turned, and I saw surprise flicker across his handsome features. Up close, he was striking, sharp jawline, intelligent dark eyes, an air of controlled intensity. "Christopher," he said, and there was something in the way he spoke my name that confirmed the rumors. "I didn't expect you to approach me." "There's a lot I'm doing differently this time," I replied cryptically. His eyebrow raised. "This time?" I made a decision in that moment, a reckless one perhaps, but I was done being careful. "Is there somewhere we can talk privately?" Lucas studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Follow me." He led me to a private viewing room, the auction house reserved for serious buyers. Once the door closed behind us, I took a deep breath. "I need your help," I began. "And before you ask why you should help me, I should tell you that I know you have feelings for me. Or at least you will. Or you did. Time is complicated." Lucas's expression remained neutral, but I saw his jaw tighten slightly. "That's quite an assumption." "It's not an assumption. It's knowledge I shouldn't have but do." I moved closer to him. "In another life, my previous life, I married Wilson. It was arranged by my parents. That marriage destroyed me slowly and deliberately, until Wilson and my brother Alex literally poisoned me to death." "That's impossible," Lucas said, but his tone was uncertain. "Is it? Look at me, Lucas. Really look at me. Something's different, isn't it? I'm standing here, 1 week before a wedding I haven't canceled yet, talking to you like I've known you for years when we've barely spoken before." Lucas stared at me intensely, and I saw the moment belief entered his eyes. "Assuming this is true, and I'm not saying I believe you, what do you want from me?" "Revenge," I said simply. "Wilson and Alex plan to use me, destroy me, and profit from my death. They need to pay for what they did, what they will do if I don't stop them. But I can't do it alone. I need resources, connections, someone who understands the world of business and power. And you think I'll help you because of supposed feelings I have for you?" I stepped even closer, close enough to see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. "I think you'll help me because you're curious. Because something in you recognizes the truth in what I'm saying. And yes, because you care about me even if you've never acted on it." The tension between us was electric. Lucas reached out, his fingers barely brushing my cheek. "You really are different. The Christopher I knew was softer. More fragile." "That Christopher died," I said quietly. "I came back harder." "And what's in this for me?" Lucas asked, his hand still hovering near my face. I met his gaze directly. "What do you want?" "You," he said without hesitation. "But not as some grateful recipient of my help. Not as someone using me the way Wilson used you." "Then how?" Lucas's hand finally made full contact with my cheek, his thumb tracing my jaw. "As an equal. As someone who chooses to be with me because they want to, not because they need to. Can you offer me that?" My heart was racing. This wasn't part of my plan, but somehow it felt right. "I don't know what I can offer you yet, Lucas. I'm still figuring out who I am now. But I can promise you honesty. And if something develops between us, it will be real." "That's enough," Lucas said, and then he was kissing me. It wasn't gentle or hesitant. It was hungry, possessive, everything my marriage to Wilson had never been. I responded in kind, my hands gripping his shoulders as he pulled me closer. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing heavily. "So," Lucas said, his voice rough, "tell me everything about this revenge plan of yours." Over the following days, Lucas and I met secretly, planning every detail. He was brilliant, seeing angles I'd missed, suggesting approaches I'd never considered. But more than that, we discovered a connection that went beyond our shared goal. "Cancel the wedding," Lucas advised during one of our meetings in his penthouse office. "Don't give them any explanation. Just walk away." "No," I said, studying the financial documents he'd gathered on Wilson's company. "That's too simple. They need to understand what they've lost. What they threw away." Lucas smiled, a dark expression that sent shivers through me. I like the way you think. So what's your plan? I go through with the wedding, I explained. But this time I'm not the devoted spouse. I'm distant, cold even. I'll refuse to provide any financial support. Let Wilson struggle. Meanwhile, you and I will quietly start acquiring shares in his competitors, building alternative ventures. When he's desperate, when he thinks he has nowhere else to turn, then I'll offer to help, but with conditions that benefit me. And Alex. My expression hardened. My dear brother has always been jealous of me even though he hides it well. He wants what I have. The family company shares that will come to me, the respect our parents gave me. In the original timeline he got everything after I died. This time, I'll make sure he gets nothing but humiliation. Lucas stood, moving to where I sat, and pulled me to my feet. You're magnificent like this. Fierce. Uncompromising. Is that what attracts you? I asked, tilting my head. My capacity for revenge? That's part of it, he admitted, his hand settling on my waist. But mostly it's seeing you value yourself. Seeing you refuse to be a victim. Our relationship evolved quickly into something intense and complicated. We satisfied each other's darker desires, finding release and connection in ways that probably weren't entirely healthy but felt necessary. Lucas was possessive but not controlling, passionate but not suffocating. With him, I could be both vulnerable and strong. Stay tonight, Lucas would whisper after our encounters, and I always did, finding comfort in his arms that I'd never experienced with Wilson. But we both knew this wasn't just physical. Something deeper was growing, something neither of us had expected. I went through with the wedding as planned, but everything was different. Where I'd once been nervous and hopeful, I was now cold and calculating. Wilson noticed immediately. You seem different, he said during our wedding reception, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Do I? I replied coolly. Perhaps I'm just tired. I caught him exchanging glances with Alex throughout the evening. They'd expected the same easy mark, the same desperate for love Christopher. They were confused by this new version. That night in our bedroom, Wilson attempted to kiss me. I turned my head. I'm not interested, I said flatly. Excuse me? Wilson looked genuinely shocked. You heard me. This marriage is a business arrangement as far as I'm concerned. Don't expect anything beyond that. I watched anger flash across his face, followed by calculation. Your parents arranged this expecting. My parents are pleased with the alliance. They didn't specify sleeping arrangements. I moved to the spare bedroom. I'll be staying here. Good night, Wilson. Over the following months, I systemically dismantled every expectation Wilson had. When his business ventures began to struggle and he came to me for money, I refused. But you're my spouse, he argued, his desperation showing. What's mine is yours and vice versa. Actually, we have a prenup, I reminded him coolly. And I've decided to invest my money elsewhere. Lucas Hartwell has some interesting opportunities that seem far more promising than your company. The mention of Lucas's name made Wilson's jaw clench. He'd heard the rumors by then, that I was spending significant time with Lucas, that we were seen together frequently at business functions and private dinners. Are you having an affair? Wilson demanded. Would you care if I was? I countered. This marriage is meaningless to both of us. Let's not pretend otherwise. What Wilson didn't know was that Lucas and I had been strategically acquiring shares in his company through shell corporations. We were slowly gaining control while Wilson hemorrhaged money trying to maintain appearances. Meanwhile, Alex tried a different approach. Christopher, can we talk? He asked one day, cornering me at a family gathering. About what, brother? You've changed. Everyone's noticed. I'm worried about you. I laughed, a harsh sound that made him flinch. Worried? That's touching, Alex. Tell me, are you worried I might see through your schemes? Worried I might discover what you're really after? His face paled. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? I leaned closer, lowering my voice. I know about you and Wilson. I know everything. And I'm going to take everything from both of you, piece by piece, until you have nothing left but each other's company. And let's see how long your love lasts when you're both broke and disgraced. As my revenge plans progressed, something unexpected happened. Lucas and I fell genuinely in love. It wasn't the desperate, needy love I'd felt for Wilson. It was something deeper, more solid. Built on honesty, mutual respect, and a shared darkness we both acknowledged and accepted in each other. I never expected this, Lucas admitted one night as we lay in his bed, my head on his chest. I thought I'd help you get revenge, maybe have an affair, then we'd part ways. And now? I asked, tracing patterns on his skin. Now I can't imagine my life without you in it. He tilted my chin up to look at him. I love you, Christopher. The real you, both the soft parts you try to hide and the sharp edges you've developed. I love you too, I whispered and meant it. I didn't think I could after everything. But you make me feel safe and dangerous at the same time. Lucas kissed me deeply and we made love. Not just satisfied desires this time but connected on every level. When he held me afterward, I felt tears slip down my cheeks. What's wrong? Lucas asked gently, wiping them away. Nothing's wrong. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, everything's right. It took 2 years, but Wilson's company finally collapsed. The combination of his poor decisions, my refusal to help, and Lucas's strategic market manipulations brought him to his knees. I'll never forget the day he came to me, broken and desperate. Please, Wilson begged, actually getting on his knees in my office. I'll lose everything. The house, the company, my reputation. Just help me this one time. Like I helped you before? I asked coldly. When I gave you my entire inheritance. When I supported you through every failure. When I sacrificed everything for your success. That was different. No, Wilson. It wasn't. You took everything I offered and then planned to kill me for more. Did you really think I didn't know? His face went white. How? How did I know? Let's just say I have excellent intuition. Or maybe you and Alex weren't as subtle as you thought. I stood looking down at him. You wanted my death to benefit you. Instead, you'll live to see your own destruction. Every day, you'll wake up knowing you had everything and lost it through your own greed and cruelty. Alex told me it would work, Wilson sobbed. He said you were weak, that you'd never fight back. Alex was wrong. And speaking of my dear brother, his turn is coming. Alex's downfall was even sweeter. I worked with Lucas to expose his embezzlement from our family company, something he'd been doing for years, assuming he'd inherit everything eventually anyway. When the evidence came to light, our family's board of directors had no choice but to prosecute. I visited him in jail once. You did this, Alex hissed through the glass partition. You ruined me. No, Alex. You ruined yourself. I just made sure you faced consequences for your actions. I leaned forward. In another life, you and Wilson poisoned me to death. You mocked me as I died. Did you really think there would be no reckoning? You're insane, he spat. Maybe, I agreed pleasantly. Or maybe I'm just someone who learned that being kind and forgiving only works when the other person has a conscience. You never did. 5 years after my rebirth, Lucas and I stood on the balcony of our home, a beautiful estate we'd designed together. The company we'd built from scratch was thriving. Wilson and Alex were both out of our lives, their power and influence gone. Any regrets? Lucas asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. Not a single one, I said honestly. Well, maybe one. I wish I hadn't wasted my first life on people who didn't deserve me. But then you might not have found your way to me. I turned in his arms, kissing him softly. True. And you were worth the journey. Even the dying part? Especially the dying part. It taught me that I'm stronger than I ever imagined. That I deserve to be loved, truly loved, not used. Lucas pulled me closer. And you are loved. Completely, unconditionally, forever. Later that night as we lay in bed, Lucas asked, do you think about them? Wilson and Alex. Sometimes, I admitted. But not with anger anymore. More like curiosity. I wonder if they ever understood what they lost. Does it matter? No, I realized. It doesn't. They're my past. You're my present and future. Sentimental, Lucas teased, but his eyes were warm. Only with you, I replied. To everyone else, I'm still the Ice King. My Ice King, Lucas corrected and kissed me. As I drifted off to sleep that night, safe in Lucas's arms, I thought about the promise I'd made as I died, to make them taste their own medicine. I kept that promise and then some. But more importantly, I'd found something I'd never had in my first life. Genuine love, true partnership, and a happiness I'd earned through my own strength. The pale ghost who'd been murdered and mocked was gone. In his place stood someone who knew his worth, who had fought for his happiness and who had won. And if that wasn't the best revenge of all, I didn't know what was.